Good afternoon, student. Welcome to the new lecture number 13 of Petrochemical Technology. So here we will study the new topic, that is crude oil separation process. So crude oil, as you know, it contains multiple of component, like for example the salt, water, soil, as well as crude oil itself contains uh, petrol, diesel, kerosene, lube oil, etc. So all these components are separated from the crude oil. So how this separated? It is separated into the refinery. So I will explain into this slide how the separation process happens. So you see, after the desalting and dehydration, means removal of the salt and water component, the crude oil is separated into the fraction by the distillation method. Distilled fraction cannot be used directly. So further, these distilled fractions are refined. So reason for such a complex set of process is difference between the crude oil properties and need of the market. So crude oil properties means diesel have different property, petrol have different property, kerosene have different property. So these are the different product of the properties of the different product. So based on that, we do the separation process, and the also the requirement of the market, like sometimes in the market there is a more demand of the diesel, so we need to produce more diesel out of the crude oil. In some countries there is a high demand of the petrol, so we have to produce high amount of petrol as per the need of the market, and sometimes the reason of the prices also. So another reason for complexity is uh, the environmental legislations, like some fuel have the high amount of carbon and they produce high carbon and other poisonous gases. So based on the environmental requirement, we have to do the distillation, and legislation demand cleaner product as major drive for the process improvement and development of novel processes. So we our objective is to produce the novel fuel that contains the minimum carbon, and it should contains low amount of the poisonous gases like sulfur and carbon dioxide, carbon monoxide, ammonia, etc. You can see into this slide, this table represent the typical physical and chemical processes in the petroleum refinery. So the first column, you see the physical process. These are the different physical process that happens into the refinery. And here we have the chemical process that is categorized into two. The one is thermal and another is catalytic. So in thermal process, you see the vis breaking. Catalytic process, you see the hydrotreating. So in physical process, let's go through the physical process, desalting and dehydration. So this is the process of removal of salt present in the crude oil and removal of water molecules. Then we have distillation. So distillation, you understand, with high temperature we distill the crude oil, we boil the crude oil with high temperature, and based on the boiling point we separate the different components that are present into the crude oil. Then we have solvent extraction. So in the solvent extraction, this is a process of removal of the one component when multiple components are dissolved by using some special solvent like methyl ethyl glycol or methyl ethyl ketone or methyl isobutyl butyl ketone, etc. These are the solvents that used for the extraction of component. Methanol is also sometimes used as a solvent extraction, for the solvent extraction. Then we have propane deasphalting method. So the removal of the asphalt from the crude oil. This is solvent dewaxing, the removal of the uh, wax from the crude oil using the solvent. Then we have blending process. The blending process is blending of ethanol to make the efficiency of the fuel, good efficiency of the fuel. Then we have in the chemical process, you see the vis breaking. In thermal process, vis breaking, this is for improving the viscosity quality. And delayed coking, this is for the improving the asphaltic properties, means removing the asphalt from the crude oil. Then we have flexi coking. This is also a method of removing asphalt. Then we have catalytic methods. Here we have hydro treating. For example, we have hydro desulfurization unit, then catalytic reforming, catalytic cracking, hydro cracking, catalytic dewaxing, alkylation, polymerization, isomerization. So all these catalytic reaction take place in presence of the catalyst. So into this slide, you see we have shown you the different stages of processing. So process of crude oil refining involves five major processes which are briefly described. So first is separation, then conversion, then treating, then blending, then auxiliary. So let's come to know what is the separation process. So this process involves separating the different fraction of hydrocarbon compounds that make up crude oil based on their boiling point differences. Additional processing of these fractions is usually needed to produce final product to be sold within the market. So here this is the first stage of the separation, that is the distillation. It is called the separation process of distillation. So here based on the boiling point differences we uh, collect the petroleum product like naphtha, hydrogen, kerosene, diesel, etc. based on their boiling point, and then further these products are processed into the uh, next plant or refineries, next unit of the refineries. So the associated operation of this separation process is atmospheric distillation, vacuum distillation, light and recovery, gas processing. So these are the associated operations of the separation of the crude oil. The next step of the separation process is conversion. So conversion, you see it includes the process used to break down the longer chain molecule into a smaller one by heating using catalyst. So because the after the distillation, the petroleum product contains the larger chains of the molecule. So these molecules are further to be broken by using the application of heat or using the application of the catalyst to change their size and structure of hydrocarbon molecules. So these process include the decomposition, dividing by thermal catalytic cracking, unification, that is combining process through the alkylation and polymerization, alteration, that is rearranging, isomerization, and catalytic reforming. So whenever you do the conversion process, so you convert the longer chain molecules into smaller chain molecules, and you make the product which is valuable for the market. For example, if you have produce the naphtha, and then these naphtha molecules are large. These naphtha molecules has to be cracked into the smaller molecules. So like further you get the product, that is methane, then you get ethane. Then ethane has got some isomers, like for example ethane, acetylene, and ethylene. So out of these two isomers, ethane and acetylene, these are further converted into the ethylene, that is a petrochemical. So here we have the example of associated operations of the conversion process, the cracking or thermal catalytic. So this is a one unit from the conversion process. Then reforming unit, then we have alkylation, then polymerization, then isomerization, then coking and vis breaking. So these are in more details and will be explained to you in further slides. Now the another process is treating process. So in treating process, you see the petroleum treating process are used to separate the undesirable components and impurities such as sulfur, nitrogen, heavy metals from the product. So after the distillation and after the conversion process, when you converted it into the different valuable products, so this product contains some impurities into it. So these impurities are sulfur, nitrogen, and heavy metals. So these are very harmful for the environment as well as for their applications. So these impurities has to be removed from the valuable products. For example, this is the example of the associated unit that works into the refinery for treating process. It is hydro desulfurization. So this is used for the removal of the sulfur. Then hydro treating, removal of the water. Then chemical sweetening, removal of hydrogen sulfide, acid gas removal. Then deasphalting. Deasphalting unit is for removal of asphalt. So the next step of the crude oil separation is blending. Blending means adding of some new chemicals to improve the property of the petroleum product. So you see blending combination process. This is the process of mixing and combining hydrocarbon fractions, additives, and other component to produce finished product with specific performance properties. Some example of this are lubricating oil, asphalt, or gasoline with different octane ratings. The associated operation for this is storage, blending, loading, and unloading of the petroleum product. And the final step of the crude oil separation is auxiliary. So this is called the auxiliary process. So this is a final process into the refinery. You can see this is explained here, the process that are in vital to the operation by providing power, waste treatment, and other utility services. Product from these facility are usually recycled and used to other processes within the refinery and are important in regard to minimizing the water and air pollution. So this is the final operation. We will see the final product that comes, that contains some pollutant, or by the operation of the refinery some waste chemicals are generated. So these waste chemicals has to be treated because they contain the mixture of the uh, gases, some poisonous liquids, or some different waste that are hazardous to the environmental and society. So these has to be treated into the different associated operations that are the boilers, wastewater treatment, hydrogen production, sulfur recovery plant. So boilers basically used to separate the water molecules, wastewater management. If the water is contains the poisonous element, it has to be treated, and then the water has to be reused, and the waste can be used for agriculture purposes. Then hydrogen production, some the waste can produce the hydrogen. Then sulfur recovery plant to recover the sulfur that is dissolved into the refinery waste. So further the process will be discussed, the crude oil separation process will be discussed in more detail into the next lecture.